welcome to another lovely Bombshell Spotlight, and I cannot be more thrilled than I am today because today we have Tolly Moseley here. She is quite possibly one of my favorite people on the planet. She is a writer, she's an aerialist, she's a yogi, she's such a bombshell. It's perfect. Tolly, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ellie, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you and all your readers.
Well, you know, what's so awesome is, and one of the things I love about you is, since the moment I met you, it's always been, this is Tolly. It's not like you have all of these different things you do, and yet somehow they all work magically together.
I think that's because I really took seriously the notion that you can be whatever you want to be. And the only time that didn't work out was I was in the first grade and I wanted to be Janet Jackson. So my career as a pop star and a member of the Jackson family never took off. But all the other things I wanted to do in life have now come to fruition. So, yeah.
And that's really why I wanted to have you in to talk to my peeps, because you're such a great example of someone who has built a brand around her passions and who is living them and actually making a living at them. And so I want to just make sure everybody knows what the heck an aerialist even is. So what is an aerialist?
Okay, so an aerialist is a dancer who performs on a variety of apparatuses in the air. My specialty is aerial silks, so I climb up long cloths and do tricks on them, spin around them. You can also perform on a lyra, that's a big metal hoop. You can perform on a static trapeze. You can even perform on chains, which I haven't tried yet, and to be honest, I probably won't ever try. I'll eat chains with the more hardcore folks out there, but I have trained in lyra, and I'm really excited to try rope one of these days. So, but silks, that's my baby.
And by the way, this is it's so beautiful to watch. I've gotten to see Tolly perform, and it's wild. It's the kind of thing where it's sort of like Cirque du Soleil-ish, where they climb up and then they kind of come down. It's really awesome to see, and you are very gifted in it. So I love that that's a passion of yours. And I love that you also have really developed as a writer.
Thanks.
That's one of those professions that I feel like a lot of people think is very elusive or you can't make money at it. So walk us through a little bit of your journey of how that became a big piece of what you do for a living.
Sure. So in 2007, I moved back to Austin after being in grad school. I had in a PhD program for a very practical profession, Victorian literature. And when I graduated, I came back to Austin, and I realized that academia was not for me. Fortunately, while I was in grad school, I discovered a magazine internship at a local magazine there in town, and I found that I really liked reporting about local creative people and local arts and local culture. So when I came back to Austin, I was looking for a media job rather than an academic job, but there weren't any, so I started a blog called Austin Eavesdropper, and I just allowed that blog, and it's still in existence, austineavesdropper.com, and I just sort of allowed that blog to act as a portal for me into the creative community of Austin. So I would write about interesting people that I had met and interesting experiences I had had, and also just tell little stories about my life. And as it grew as a readership, that blog did two things. It connected me to the creative community of Austin, and it gave me a chance for my writing to develop. So eventually, people started relying on me as an Austin expert of sorts, and it was kind of timed well with the rise of Austin as a cultural center in the country just anyway. So I got lots of really cool opportunities. I got to be on TV a few times just talking about interesting things to do in Austin. And I kept on plugging away at this blog while having a day job on the side. And my day job for 5 years was in publicity. But I kept on just, kind of cultivating my blog and using that as almost like training wheels for a brand. And just sort of that running a blog can help people figure out what it's like to manage a brand. So once that happens, I took the opportunity to explore more freelance writing options, pitch myself out there, and once I felt confident in my writing, and was able to demonstrate that writing on the blog, I started getting some gigs. And so I kept on doing those gigs on the side, and until one day I was able to accrue enough paid writing gigs to quit my day job and just be a freelance writer. And so now that's what I do. That's my main job. I am both a journalist. I write for our local paper, the Austin American-Statesman. I became a health correspondent for theatlantic.com, the website for the Atlantic Monthly. I write for a variety of other homes on the web, and I'm also a copywriter. So I help other clients find their textual voice for their websites or social media.
I love that. And so you've developed that into a real thing. And I should mention that as an aerialist, you've also done some amazing shows. I mean, like national stuff, and opened for Willie Nelson. Isn't that right?
Yeah, it's true. We one of our first gigs is opening for Willie Nelson at Austin City Limits. And funny story about that gig, we were backstage after our performance, and we actually smelled something special coming from Willie Nelson's dressing room, and we were like, oh my God, we've totally made it.
This is the moment. That's hilarious.
So,
I love it. But I mean, so you, again, that was sort of, how did you even get into silks? I imagine that's one of your big passions, but I don't actually know how you started it.
Yeah, so part of being connected and fascinated by the creative culture of Austin is that, or the creative culture of your city, is that you're always out absorbing it, right? And so in 2008, about a year after I moved back home to Austin, I was walking downtown with my husband, and I just looked up in the sky, and there were these people dancing off the side of a building, 15 stories up in harnesses, and I was like, what is that? I want to do that. That just looks amazing. So it was 3 years until I finally got up the guts to take my first aerial class, but I looked up the same dance company that did that performance and booked myself in a class for beginning aerial silks. This was 3 years ago, and I just kind of became obsessed with it. So after a year of instruction, I had my first public show, and kept on performing. I developed a really close silks partner, and we booked shows all around town. And then last summer, I was on kind of a high of performing, and it was also when I got pregnant. But right before I got pregnant, I joined a professional company, and they're called Wrapped, and our website is Wrapped, R-A-P-T, aerialdance.com. And we performed for Willie Nelson, we performed for churches, we've done aerial bartending. And so now, in addition to aerial bartending, this is an actual thing. It's becoming even more of a thing. So, anyways, so in addition to writing, this is another way that I support myself. Aerial dance. Yeah.
It's just amazing. And so I really want to ask you, what is the message that you have for anyone who doesn't know how to make all of their passions into what makes them money?
Sure. So I think whenever we tell people, we as in my husband and I, what we do for a living, I'm a writer, an aerial dancer, and my husband is a musician, they assume that we're either broke or living on a trust fund, and these are just kind of our made-up jobs. But that's the case for neither of us. This is actually how we make a living, pay the bills, support ourselves. So I think the number one key is identifying what your passions are and then devoting real working hours to them on the side while you have your day job. So if you have a passion, that's wonderful, and if you think about it a lot, well, that's wonderful too, but you have to kind of treat these passions like a job that doesn't pay you quite yet, but you have to put in the time and put in the expertise and put in the networking to build up a roster of clients, of clips, of aerial skills know-how. And then eventually, when you're able to take the entrepreneurial leap, you'll have a bank of clients and skills that you can call upon when you do quit that day job. So putting the time on the side is for your passions, and don't give up. Don't give up. It is possible to live out a passionate life doing the things that you truly do love. That's not a made-up thing.
I love it. And speaking of You've got a pretty big article that just came out in The Atlantic. It's your second piece in The Atlantic, right?
Yeah, it's my second piece. So as a writer, my blog is austineavesdropper.com, and it kind of reflects my sensibility as a writer, which is listening. I always love to just listen in for weird, interesting stories, and especially interesting pockets of people that we don't get to hear from as much. So my first story for The Atlantic was on Williams syndrome, which is a condition that compels people to trust too much. They have a really hard time turning on distrust. So I heard about it on NPR, probably about 5 years ago, and thought, oh my God, that just sounds so weird and interesting, and I would love to find out more about this condition and what it's like to live in that person's skin. So that was my first article for the Atlantic Monthly. It's called "What Happens When You Trust Too Much." And then my second article is on kind of a heavy topic, but certainly a pertinent one in our news cycle right now. And that is about capital punishment and the people who have to physically mete that out. So whenever we talk about the death penalty or capital punishment in our society, we talk about it in these really abstract terms, but we tend to forget that there's a real person on the other side of that has to make the injection, that has to stand guard at the door while the whole thing is happening. It has to be a member of the strap-down team. So I spoke to people who had done this work, and I wanted to find out if there were lasting effects, like lasting psychological effects to doing this kind of work. So I found a psychologist that studies this exact topic, and I spoke to retired prison wardens, and the results are really fascinating, and they'll be up on The Atlantic in their health section of their website.
Awesome. And then, this is just amazing to me, Tolly. Looking at when you first started Austin Eavesdropper, could you have pictured doing an article like that?
No, I can't believe I get to write for The Atlantic. I mean, I have to pinch myself every day that this is the caliber of writers that I get to associate myself with. And that gig came about as a result of not just Austin Eavesdropper, but networking here in town. I was at a storytelling event while I was pregnant, talking about this time I took a naked yoga class in Austin. That is a true story. And I was telling this story live for a charity in Austin called Austin Bat Cave, and there happened to be a writer for The Atlantic there in the audience who heard it and wrote me afterwards and said that was a really amazing story. Would love to get coffee sometime. So if there's a whole theme to our conversation, Ellie, it's not only, having passions on the side and cultivating them, but really inserting yourself in the community where you want to be. If you're an attorney over here, but what you really want to be is a pole dancer, well, you got to hang out with the pole dancers. I mean, you can't just be thinking about being one. You've got to take yourself to that community and transfer your passions to the places where those passions are already being lived out.
I love that. You've also got a lot of other cool stuff, obviously, always on your blog. It's great to go over and read austineavesdropper.com. And you've got an aerial show coming up in November that we're going to have information on as well. Tolly, yes. I just thank you so much for being here. You're such an inspiration as someone who really does stand for what you believe in, and you live your passions. And I love getting to share you with my audience, and I know they're going to be inspired by you as well.
You too, Ellie. Thank you for being a mutual inspiration to my life. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. All right. Mwah. See you soon.
Mwah. Bye.